going to be talking about some new kinds of clauses today, but I first want to do a quick review of a purpose clause. So this sentence, I went to the store to buy some butter, has a purpose clause. And what is the purpose clause in this sentence? What's the reason you did something, or what's the purpose of going to the store? To buy some butter. So what makes it a purpose clause? What do you remember about the verbs in a sentence with a purpose clause? So the main verb is in the indicative because it's a real action. It really did happen. I did go to the store. So purpose clauses show the intended results. Why did I go to the store? Well, I went to the store intending to buy some butter, right? So we use the subjunctive in the to buy some butter. So to buy would be in the subjunctive, and the reason is that it's something we wish or hope would happen, but the sentence doesn't actually say that I was successful in buying the butter, only that I went to the store. So maybe I got distracted in the chip aisle and forgot about the butter, or maybe there was a sudden run on butter and the store was out of butter. So uncertain truths always use the subjunctive. Okay, now the last thing is that the purpose clause also uses the sequence of tenses. Okay, now let's look at the result clause. So in here we have the subjunctive in the clause, and we have in the indicative in the main clause. All right, so the result clause shows the result of an action and also uses the subjunctive, even though the result is a fact, not just something wished or hoped for. And that's just a peculiarity of Latin grammar in this instance, okay? So just take it for what it is, even though the result is a fact, okay? So let's look at the sentence. I was so scared that I was quaking in my boots. Which clause in this sentence should be in the indicative? I was so scared. That's the thing. That's not the result, right? The result would be the second part of it. So the result clause is that I was quaking in my boots. Okay. Now, like a purpose clause, the result clause is introduced by an ut, but never by a nay. And the main clause is in the indicative, right? So this would be indicative, and this would be, the result clause would be in the subjunctive. Okay, so the main clause contains an adverb or an adjective of degree that triggers the result clause. So I was so scared. How so scared was I? That I was quaking in my boots. If you look in the purpose clause, in this right here, there's no, I went to the store, there's no so, or there's no adjective. So purpose clauses never have a trigger in them. Okay, so the result clause also, so we've got an adverb adjective of degree that triggers the result clause, and the result clause follows the sequence of tenses just like the purpose clause does. And in English, the conjunction is frequently that, which is right here. I was so scared that I was shaking in my boots. So here's important to remember. A purpose clause expresses why something is done, and a result clause expresses the actual outcome. That is the difference between the two. All right, so result clause is new. Purpose clause is just a review. Now let's take a look at something called a cum clause. Now, so far you've learned cum as a preposition that takes the ablative, and cum plus the ablative shows means or manner. Okay? Now, cum can also be used as a conjunction that introduces a clause. But note, cum followed by the ablative is never a cum clause, okay? So it can be used as a conjunction that introduces a clause, and in a cum clause, right, cum is used as a conjunction to introduce a clause, just like sometimes we have ut or nay or things like that. So these are all called cum clauses. We'll look at a couple of them. The first one we're going to see is called a cum temporal. Now, for the cum temporal, we don't use the subjunctive. We actually use the indicative, which I know you're going to be happy to do because you probably don't like forming the subjunctive as much, right? And the reason we use the cum temporal is we know the exact time of the circumstance. And when we translate it, we can translate it as when or sometimes while. So if I gave you this in Latin, cum urbem, that should be an M. Cum urbem condidit Aeneas in Italia erat. When, here we have our when he founded the city, Aeneas was in Italy. So this part is our main clause. Aeneas was in Italy. This is our cum temporal clause, when he founded the city. So condidit is in the indicative because the time is precise. So both of them are in the indicative. At the moment he found the city, he was in Italy. Both of those are completely factual. Here's another one. Cum tacent clamant. And Cicero says that. When, so we have the when, they are silent, they are shouting. So at the moment, it has to do with temporal, means time, right? So when they are silent, at the moment of their silence, they are really shouting. And that's what Cicero said. Okay, here's another cum clause called the cum circumstantial. And your book calls it part of the cum temporal, just so you know. And what it is the cum plus the subjunctive. Now, it indicates the circumstances under which the verb in the main clause has occurred. What are the circumstances that are going on? So we start with the cum. Cum essem. Here we have our subjunctive, and it translates as when. Cum essem in Tusculano accepi tuas literas. When I was, here we go. When I was, and here's our when, or cum. When I was in Tusculanum, I received your letter. Under what circumstances? Well, the circumstances was I was in Tusculanum. Those are the circumstances. So the subjunctive tells us the general circumstances when the speaker received the letter. The speaker received the letter sometime during the period when he was in Tusculanum. Okay, let's look at another one. Cum, there we have the cum again. Cum modestus ad medium pontem venissit. Here is our subjunctive. Dedicit pons. When Modestus had come to the middle of the bridge fell. So here is our main clause. The bridge fell. And when did the bridge fall? Sometime after Modestus had come to the middle of the bridge. So during this, it's almost like a period of time. It can be. So what circumstances? What were the circumstances? During the time period he had come to the middle of the bridge. So let me see if I can help you here. Cum, this conjunction. So both of these, cum circumstantial and cum temporal, cum is used as a conjunction just to tie the two clauses together. Cum temporal uses the indicative in both, right? And because we know the exact time when the main verb has occurred. All right, cum circumstantial uses the subjunctive because we know general circumstances under which the main verb has occurred. So you can see that if we know the general circumstances, it's not exact. So therefore, it's a little bit, we have to use the subjunctive because it's not totally clear, but in the temporal, we know the exact time, okay? Now, there's a fine line between cum temporal and cum circumstantial. Sometimes the Romans used a temporal where you might think a circumstantial works better, and then it just becomes a choice for you, okay? So it's not always clear as mud about which one you should use. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is the cum causal. And the cum causal uses the subjunctive. And it shows the cause of the circumstance or event in the main clause. And it translates as since. So if I look here, here's my cum hoc sciret. And here we go is the subjunctive. Potuit eos iuare. Since, right, there we go. Since he knew this, he was able to help them. Why was he able to help them? What was the cause? Because it's kind of like a because. He was able to help them because of something he knew, right? So context is what tells the difference between a circumstantial and a causal. Sometimes it's hard to decide whether to translate cum as when, if it was a circumstantial, or a since, which it was the cause. Then you get to choose. All right, last one. Cum adversative or cum consessive. Your book calls this consessive, but it's also called adversative. It's the most rare of all the cum clauses, and this cum clause also uses the subjunctive. So I like the word adversative, think adversary, because this cum clause shows the opposite of the main clause, and it translates as although. Okay, it often uses tamen, which means still or nevertheless, in the main clause. So if I said cum, there we go, cum hoc sciret, and then we have the subjunctive here. Tamen, and then we have that tamen, milites missit. Although he knew this, he nevertheless, right? This shows the fact that it's opposite. Although he knew something, maybe he shouldn't have, he did it anyway. Although he knew this, he nevertheless sent the soldiers. Pretty easy. You just kind of get used to going cum and which one makes more sense, the when or the since, or the while. Just really take a look at the context.